Hey everyone! Today, we're going to dig into some of that old school garden wisdom. You know, the kind you're just not going to find on a plastic tag from the hardware store. We're talking about something with real history, some real heft, something permanent. So let's get our hands dirty.
Just think about that for a second. That smell. It's more than just a label, right? It's a real connection to the past. It's a feeling, a whole sensory thing that a piece of plastic it can't give you. So yeah, that kicks us right off into our first section, a smell of history. And this isn't just about a hunk of metal, not at all. It's about rediscovering a way of doing things that values longevity, especially in a world that seems to forget things so fast.
So what exactly are we talking about here? Vintage silver plant markers. Believe it or not, these were the high-tech solution back in the Victorian era. It was a time of what they called parademania. Yep, you heard me, fern fever. And people were collecting all these pricey, exotic plants. And, well, they needed a label that was actually going to last.
And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. It's just so simple and true. Wood rots. We've all seen it. Ink on a plastic tag fades after one hot summer. But silver? Silver sticks around. It holds on to that name, season after season.
Which, it's a perfect lead into our next section, the silver standard. Here we're going to put these markers head to head with some of the other things you might be tempted to use in the garden.
Okay, so look at this breakdown. It's pretty darn clear. You've got your wood or bamboo, which sure, everyone uses, but it rots and the ink is gone in a season. Lead and zinc were a step up, for sure, but that soft metal, it kind of blurs over the years. But then you get to silver plate and sterling. The resistance is high, the engraving lasts. I mean, silver was basically engineered for this job. It just works.
And man, does this slide just hit it home or what? On the left, a site we all know too well. That brittle, faded plastic tag, totally useless. And on the right, something that's been through 100 Chicago winters. And let me tell you, that's saying something. And you can still read it. That's the difference right there. Disposable versus durable.
This all brings us to history in the dirt. Because these markers, they weren't just tools. They tell a much bigger story about how we started to think about our gardens, how we organized them, and how we valued them in a whole new way.
You know, it's fascinating when you trace it back. It starts with a real simple need. I need something that won't rot. Then sterling silver becomes this big status symbol for the fancy estates. But the real game changer? That was the electroplating revolution in the late 1800s. All of a sudden, regular middle-class folks could afford them. And today, we're seeing it all come full circle.
And we got to talk about this again. Parademania. I'm not kidding. This was a genuine craze. People were spending serious money on these exotic ferns for their little glass conservatories. You couldn't just jam a stick in the pot next to something that cost you a fortune. No way. You needed a permanent record for your investment. This fern fever really drove the whole market.
So, which one's actually better for the job? Well, sterling's valuable, no doubt about it, but it's soft. You try to push that into our hard-packed clay soil around here, and it's just going to bend on you. Silver plate, though, that's built on a tough base metal like nickel or copper. It's got that Midwest work ethic, you know? It looks nice, but it's got a backbone built for a hard day's work.
And this is the big cultural shift that happened. When you use a silver marker, you're sending a signal. It says, hey, I'm not just growing plants here. I'm curating a collection. Your garden, it stops being just a patch of dirt, and it turns into this living library, just full of stories and history.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks, or silver tacks, I guess. We'll call this a modern tactical guide. If you're feeling inspired and you want to find some of these for your own garden, here's what you got to know.
It really just comes down to 4 simple things. First, look for that EPNS mark. That means it's on a nickel base, and that stuff is tough as nails. Second, look for real, deep, old-school engraving, not that modern laser stuff. Third, and this is important, always use a screwdriver or something to make a pilot hole. You don't want to scrape the silver off on a rock. And last, that dark patina, that tarnish, it's your friend. It's a protective layer, so don't go trying to scrub it all off.
Now for a question I hear all the time. People get a little worried about sticking metal in their garden beds. Hey, will these silver markers poison my soil? The answer is a big, clear no. Not at all. In fact, silver is naturally antimicrobial. And unlike some of that pressure-treated wood, it's totally stable. It is not going to leach anything nasty into your soil. It's perfectly safe for your herbs, your flowers, your veggies, the whole shebang.
All right, another key question, especially if you're out there hunting at flea markets or antique shops. How do you know what you've got in your hand?
It's actually pretty easy. You just got to look for the little hallmarks. If you see 925 or the word sterling, you've got the real deal. If you see stuff like EPNS, A1, or triple plate, that's silver plate. And just remember, the real value of the silver plate isn't what you could melt it down for, it's in its history and how darn useful it is in the garden.
And that brings us right to our final thought here, the commitment to permanence. We're going to zoom out a little bit from the garden bed and look at the bigger picture this little tool represents.
And this quote it nails it, doesn't it? We live in such a throwaway culture. But a tool like this, one that actually gets more character, more history with every passing season, well, there's just a different kind of satisfaction in that.
So when you boil it all down, here's what it is. Using a silver marker is a statement. It's saying that this plant, this spot in your garden, this little piece of living history, it matters. You're in it for the long haul. You're playing the long game.
And so I'll just leave you with this one question to chew on. Take a look at your own garden, or your own life for that matter, and just ask yourself, what's worth making permanent? What stories do you want to make sure last for 100 seasons? Thanks for tuning in.